Today's suite is the sixth suite, the last suite of Bach's set. Bach's set. Ha ha ha. This is considered to be technically the most difficult. I mean, it's the longest. It has the biggest range. Goes up well into the violin range. And when played by a modern style cello, which is what most of you all would play and are used to, it is even more difficult because you only have 4 strings to use. The piece is actually says it's for a cello, a violoncello with 5 strings on it. So what I brought for you today is a violoncello with 5 strings on it, and those strings are the same usual 4 plus a high E string above that. So that helps us get up into that high violin range that you'll see, especially in this first movement, this prelude. The suite itself is like all of the others. It's in the normal Baroque pattern of what they called in graduate school the Pack-Sog, which is the prelude, Allemande, Courante, Sarabande, option, which in this case means you can pick, the option's given to you, it's gavottes in this case, and a jig. Now the option in the other suites, of course, that you've already heard, are minuets or bourrées. So that's the option in this one, the gavotte, and there are 2 of them. We'll get to that later. So I guess I should talk. I think I'm the only one actually playing on a literal period-style instrument. What that means is that it was an instrument, not necessarily from the period, although this one is. It's a 17th century cello. It can be a copy these days. We make really nice copies of these old instruments, and they work beautifully. I mean, perhaps better because they're newer and crisper. But this is an original from about 1680. Probably from Italy, although it's got kind of the roundness of a Dutch cello, but for whatever reason, the people that know these things say it's Italian. It's a little smaller. Some Bach manuscripts ask for a violoncello piccolo, a little cello, and this in fact is a little cello. I've seen smaller ones, but this is about a 7/8 size cello compared to the modern style Stradivari model. And let's see, well, the big difference is, of course, obviously there's no end pin here in the bottom, so we get used to holding it with our legs, our gambas, which is where the other relative of this instrument comes from, the viola da gamba. Of course, we use gut strings rather than steel or other synthetic materials, so these are just literally made of sheep's intestines that have been dried and spun together. The lower strings are wound, and they started doing that in about, almost exactly 1670. There's a painting where you can see the 3 normal cello upper strings are gut, and then the lowest string is shining and silver wound. So it's appropriate to have a couple wound strings on the lower ones to help make them a little bit thinner and easier to use. Other cosmetic things, you'll just see the fingerboard doesn't quite reach as far down as a modern cello would. But that sort of grew over time. The classical fingerboard is another inch or 2 longer, and then we get down to the modern style. And that just simply enabled the player to play higher with ease. I won't quite reach the top here. I'll probably get to about here, so there's still plenty of room left for this piece. Other things about this? The bow, I believe you've had one presenter already.
Yeah, Robert played with a Baroque bow.
Good, yes, yeah, so good friend. Robert used a Baroque bow on his modern cello, which is one perfectly wonderful thing to do. I'm glad he's doing that, and many other people are trying out Baroque bows. This is all I use on this cello. I don't have the option of using a modern bow on this. It just would crunch the sound. It's a very delicate instrument. Let's see. So he's probably talked about the bow.
A little bit, yeah. They compared because he brought
both
modern bow and yeah. And I think talking a little bit about the balance but he didn't really go very deeply into it. I don't know if you want to talk a little more about that.
Not much to say, except that the flavors of the bow were, there's just so many varieties back then. This just is one of a million styles. Once you got to the modern style, the Tourt style bow, they're all pretty much generically the same after that. I mean, a little different in the head style, but not much different, So, I literally, just to even do what I do, I have to own 10 bows. I have to have a couple 17th century bows, like 3 or 4 of these early 18th century, you know, a nice like Mozart sort of late 18th century bow, a Beethoven bow, and then torque bows, you know, and things in between. And it's just...
Is that Baroque bow shorter than a modern bow?
This one is, but then it's not standard at all. I mean, really, my Beethoven bow, which was from about 1810, original, is 2 inches longer than a modern bow. So you know, who knows? It could be really anything. And you know, I get to, well, I used to before the pandemic, and we'll see what happens. Play over at the Smithsonian every year or two for their chamber music series, and they would, you know, go upstairs and go to the secret locker, cold storage, and pull out these Stradivarius and Amadis and let us play on them. And they're just drawers and drawers of bows, of old style bows, and anything you could imagine was there. I mean, things with duck heads on them, and you know, extra long, extra short, you know, whatever it is. So.
Can you talk a little bit about tuning?
Tuning, okay, yeah. As in, yes, what pitch level we're at. So as opposed to the modern cello, I hope if there's anyone playing along today, definitely keep the mute on because it won't sound very good. With these period instruments, you know, the pitch level in the old days was so varied that, you know, anywhere from 370 for an A, which is like a good third lower than modern pitch, up to 466. I've heard of even higher than that. So they sort of settled on with period instrument music to just be right in the middle of that range, which is, and also to be exactly a half step down from modern pitch. So it's sort of easy for like, you know, if you have a harpsichord, you can just shift over the keyboard and play modern style, or shift it down one exact half step to 415 and play, well, 415.3 I guess it is technically, to play with us. So that's how that came about, and we use all kinds of pitch levels depending on what music we're doing. 392 is good for you know, 18th century French music. Sometimes we're asked to do that. If we're playing 17th century Italian music, it's 440 or 465, another half step above that. Or if we're playing Viennese, you know, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, sometimes it's at 430 or 435 or whatever it's called for. So whatever the winds are set at, really.
Aha.
So yeah, so I guess, should I just play a little bit?
Yeah, let's you want to start with the prelude?
I suppose so. I'll go in order. So the first movement is a prelude, and just like all the other suites, it's it is metered, but and this one is much more metered than, say, the first suite, which has perhaps chances to be a little bit more flexible with the tempo. But otherwise, it's certainly not a dance. It's not something you would even consider being, you know, completely metrical. This is, but this one is sort of a jig, you could say. You know, it's in 12, 12/8, and skipped around like that a bit. There's also this one is a technique called bariolage, which you may have heard of, and that's just the going back and forth between one string and the next very quickly. That time it starts right off with that, so that's one of the things to listen for in this. Also, another interesting aspect of 18th century music is that people don't think about is that, you know, there's always a key signature, which of course this is 2 sharps, D major. There's always a time signature. There's often a tempo marking, not of course in this stuff, but there's also a mood or a dynamic signature. So here he simply puts, well, he doesn't even put the forte, but he puts piano on bar 2, which sort of sets you up for echo effect. And he only has it right there and maybe one other spot, and so it's sort of like a dynamic signature for the piece. So you'll listen for these dark and light contrasts. Yeah.
Okay, let's be sure to mute these. Thanks.